Very grateful and honored to be amidst all of you here today. Before I start speaking, I'd like to offer a few prayers. You can close your eyes and join me. Om Agyantimirandasya Gyananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manovishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutaha Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Satvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Shakam Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Shrute Devi Pranamami Haripriya Panchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sandhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Thank you very much for joining here today. It's an honor and pleasure to be able to share some thoughts with you all, and hopefully some of what I speak is going to help you all in your life. First of all, when you look at an image like this, it makes you think. So I like to start my presentations with thoughts before actually speaking. So this image signifies many things at many levels. At one level, it signifies that this is where we want to work towards. On another level, it also signifies that many decisions and many changes that happen in life are not in our control. And not having anything in our control, that itself is accepting that itself is a big change. So today, as we're going to speak for the next 1 hour or so on coping with change, I'm going to give you all a lot of thoughts on dealing with change that happens in life. Some of these thoughts will be radical, some of these thoughts will be completely contradictory to what you have ever thought about change. And some of these thoughts will begin to start a trail of thoughts in your own mind, how to deal with changes that come in life. I'm sure nobody here has not experienced change. Most people have experienced change, and not just small changes. They experience substantial changes in life where you have no control. And also, there are many of us here who want to make some change in life, but we are struggling and we are not able to make that change. And therefore, at both extremes, this discussion is going to be helpful to you all. When I'm going to speak, please don't be under the impression that I'm going to give you a conclusion in the end. I'm going to give you a conclusion all through. So at any point of time you find something hitting your way, please feel free to note it down. If you like, we can have a discussion at the end, and we can clarify what you would like to know. So I always like to begin my seminars by talking about what are the 4 aims of life. Every human being has 4 aims, and these 4 aims define life. The first aim of life is to live, which is also known as the physical quotient of life. Everyone wants to live and nobody wants to die. So somehow or the other, the aspiration for living for long is there. That's why people go to gyms, there is swimming, there is so much of consciousness of health and diet and so on and so forth. But that's the most basic aim of life. to live. The second aim of life is to learn. That means upgrade one's knowledge, grow in one's understanding of life, and grow in one's understanding of things around us. But the third aim of life is even more important, to love. To love essentially means experiencing what we call as the emotional quotient of life. Most people today have very weak emotional quotients, and naturally their experience of love also is weak. If something doesn't work out, we go ahead and change it. Why? Because our ability to handle fluctuations in emotions is not so much there. And that's why the third aim of life is to love. The human beings are not rational animals, but they're relational animals. That's why you'll find social networking is such a massive phenomenon today. You know why? Because people want to connect with other people. Unfortunately, when you cannot connect with people who are next to you, you like to connect with people who are online. When you try to connect with people who are next to you, it becomes very difficult because people don't behave exactly the way you want them to behave. You try to shut them down, you try to put them on silent mode, that's when they start speaking more, Essentially, in social networking, it gives you much more flexibility. You can unfriend anyone. You can block anyone. You can do whatever you want. The reason is because the control is in your hand. And naturally, because the whole emotional quotient is so difficult, having a conversation with a live human being, trying to have a connection with a live human being is so much more difficult today. So the first aim of life is to live. The second aim of life is to learn. The third aim of life is to love. And the fourth aim of life is to leave a legacy. That means much beyond you're gone, how do you want to be remembered? Leaving a legacy is what we call as a spiritual quotient of life. Leaving a legacy is about living life in such a way that much beyond you're gone, people remember you for what you have left behind. And that is one of the most important needs of a human being today. So all these four things can happen if you can learn to cope with what life gives you. Especially the concept of loving and leaving a legacy. It's very easy to love and to leave a legacy if we can learn to cope with all the changes that life throws on you. And that is what the subject matter of today's discussion is. The first question is, why change? A human being is always trying to improve himself or herself. And generally, when people become successful, when people achieve a certain level of success, that's when changing becomes difficult. Because when people come to a state of success, which is very rare and which brings about a great amount of responsibility, and then you tell them you need to change, they just can't handle it. Because most of the times people are uncomfortable with this whole concept of change. Especially successful people become very uncomfortable with the whole concept of change. I'll tell you reasons why successful people have difficulty in accepting change. All of us, to some level or the other, to some extent or other, are successful in life. And I'm going to talk to you all about what is that mindset that you all have that is preventing you all from embracing change. And that is what the subject matter of today's discussion is going to be. One time, during the communist times, there was a foreign minister who came to the communist regime. And the home minister, he said, let me give you a tour of our village. And he said, I want to show you all how the communication and the kind of connection that we have with one another is so powerful and communism works. Yeah. So he took him to a village, knocked on one door, and there was a farmer. So this minister asked the farmer, if you have 2 refrigerators, will you give one to your neighbor? The farmer said, of course I'll give. So this man, he told the foreign minister, see, how our people are. They're ready to share whatever they have with others. And then he said, if you have 2 cars, will you give one to your neighbor? He said, of course I'll give. He said, if you have 20 acres of land, will you give 10 acres to your neighbor? He said, of course I'll give. He said, if you have 2 cows, will you give 1 cow to the neighbor? He said, no. This fellow said, why? He said, I have 2 cows. The rest of the thing he doesn't have actually. So theoretically, he can always say, I'll give. So the tendency of a living entity, of a human being, is to have selfish desires. In Sanskrit, there is a word known as swartha. Swartha means selfishness. And swartha also essentially means self-interest. Everyone wants to work for the self-interest, for one's own self. And therefore, the question that everyone is asking is, what is in it for me? So, if we are going to talk about change, then we have to first establish that change is going to be helpful for you. That's when the mind starts accepting the possibility of going through some change in one's life. Accepting the possibility that change is good. There are many insecurities that change brings in. The nature of human being is that he wants to play it safe. And change brings a certain amount of insecurity and actually makes it feel that it is not safe. Therefore, people resist change. There was a farmer who went to a veterinary doctor and he told this vet that I have a bull that is so lazy, it doesn't do anything. Can you give me something to make this bull work fast? So this veterinary doctor gave him a pill. He said, you feed this bull every day this pill and the bull will run. After 2 days, this farmer came running back to the veterinary doctor and he said, the bull is running so fast, I can't handle him. The veterinary doctor said, what can I do? You wanted the bull to run fast. He said, now give me a pill so that I can run along with it. So when change happens, and it happens on such a drastic pace, sometimes it's very unnerving. And you can't handle that kind of change. And that is the reason it creates a certain fear in us. That if change happens at such a pace that I can't handle it, will I be able to deal with it? So might as well not go through any change. Life is already continuing normally. Life is already continuing in a pace that I can handle. Why go through change? So sometimes, even if it is for the positive, people resist change because they fear that change will make them live a life that they are not able to handle. I'm talking about pace, I'm talking about quality, I'm talking about the type of lifestyle that we are used to. There are 4 belief systems that successful people have in their minds. And these 4 belief systems are the belief systems that make one resistant to change. And as I'm going to tell you all these 4 belief systems, you will understand that you will fit in one of the 4. Every human being fits into one of the 4. And these are the very belief systems that make it impossible for you to go through changes in your life. The first belief system is, I choose to succeed. This indicates that successful people have a high need of what is known as self-determination. That means such people have a need to have a personal commitment to change. In this world, things can be controlled and people need to be loved. But what we like to do is, we like to control people and love things. We need to love people and use things, but we end up using people and loving things. Now, if you look at the families, today's family structures, today's organizational structures, today's societies, why are there difficulties and problems? The reason is because most difficulties and problems stem from one very important mindset. and you'll recognize it immediately. We are trying to deal with humans the way we are dealing with machines. The moment you start dealing with humans the way you start dealing with machines, humans don't function exactly that way. As I was telling in the beginning, a machine can be put on, machine can be put off. A human being takes his own time. You cannot put him off, you can't put him on your own. It's his mood, you know. So one day you are in a mood of laughing, having fun, and you come home and you find that the home atmosphere is like a serious war affair, you know. A massive war atmosphere is created at home. Now how do you change that mood? It's not like changing a screensaver, you know. It's not like changing the music. It's not like changing your wallpaper on your computer. The mood depends on human beings. And because people are not comfortable with humans in that way, they prefer to deal with machines. So the concept here is that the more we are committed to believe that something is true, the less likely we are going to be able to change our belief systems. And every successful people has one very powerful quality, and that quality is of persistence. That means if that person strongly believes in something, no matter what happens, that person will go and get it. That perseverance, that quality of commitment, that quality of persistently following a goal helps one overcome a lot of obstacles that one faces in life. There are so many examples of people who have achieved the impossible just because of this persistence. That same persistence can become a negative factor when it comes to change, when it comes to the concept of going through change in your life. So essentially, that person starts thinking, so far, because I had this persistence, because I had this determination, I have been successful in life. Why should I change now? Why should I change that quality which has made me successful so far? So the same persistence and the same non-caring attitude to all the comments, all the criticism, to everything, one starts using the same thing when it comes to change. People come and suggest to you that you should go through this change in your life. This habit of yours is not good. The persistence that they have for not caring for criticism, not caring for comments, not caring for negativity, it becomes a barrier here when it comes to dealing with change, when it comes to going through some change in your personal life. So the second belief system that a human being has, so the first belief system is, I choose to succeed. That makes a person very rigid and unflexible for change. The second belief system is, I can succeed. That means successful people believe that they have the internal capacity to make desirable things happen to them in their life. That means they tend to have some superstitious beliefs about why they're successful in life. Now, successful people don't wait for things to happen, but make things happen. And to make things happen, each successful person has some habit which they consider to be the reason for their success. Let me give you some examples and you'll understand what I'm talking about. Like for example, if a student thinks that if I have to be successful in my exams, I need to stay awake all night. There are many students, even if they have completed the portion, they stay awake just because of superstition. The nights when I'm awake, next day exam goes well. There are some tennis stars. They need to bounce the ball a certain number of times, you know, because they think that if I bounce it a certain number of times, definitely it will be an ace. So each one of us have created a superstition around our success. Taxi drivers in India, you know, before they start the taxi, first thing in the morning, they offer some prayers. They offer agarbatti to the taxi itself, incense to the taxi, they worship the taxi. Each one of us, no matter who we are, we have created a superstition around our success. And if somebody tells you that you have to change, it's impossible. Because they think the whole thought process is my success has come due to my superstition, this factor, and if you tell me to change that factor, I don't want to take a risk. And many times, these rituals that we have created for ourselves become the greatest barrier for us to go through change in our lives, for us to progress in our lives. So sometimes a person becomes so averse to change that he may go to any extent to not allow that change. In fact, that person becomes really hostile when anybody is trying to make you change in your life. The third belief system for successful people, why they resist change so much, is I will succeed. First is I choose to succeed. Second is I can succeed. And third is I will succeed. So that means successful people have an unflappable sense of optimism. They have such a strong sense of self-confidence. And naturally, this sense of overconfidence in themselves leads them to overcommitment. That means they take up so much on themselves that they have no time for themselves. I've seen so many people across the world, very, very successful. But for them to reach the next level of success, they need to work on themselves. But because they have taken up so much on themselves, they have no time to work on themselves because they're just so fatigued. Michelangelo, who was one of the most successful painters of his time, he had a rival whose name was Bramante. And the Pope, he gave a particular project to Michelangelo to paint something. So actually to sculpt something. So he chose a particular marble to go and sculpt it. And he went into a cave and began sculpting. It took him about 8 months to finish that, the statue that he was sculpting. When he came out after 8 months, the Pope cancelled the project because his rival, Bramante, he somehow brainwashed the Pope and gave the Pope another idea. So when Michelangelo came out after 8 months of constantly laboring on that one statue, the Pope said, "We don't want the statue, we want a painting now." Michelangelo was not a painter, he was a sculptor at that point of time. But now, because this whole thing was changed, he came out and he learned to paint. And it took him years to make that one painting, but it became a historical painting in his life. The point I'm trying to tell was that here is a person who had great self-confidence in himself. But along with self-confidence, he also pushed himself to the limit. So many times when people are very successful in life, they also take on too much on themselves. And because they take on so much on themselves, somehow or the other, they have no time for themselves. Their family suffers, their physical health suffers, their mental health suffers, society suffers, the organization which they are leading suffers. Because when a person is himself not stable, how is it possible for that person to lead others stably? And the fourth belief system is I have succeeded. The first is I choose to succeed. Second is I can succeed. Third is I will succeed. And the fourth is I have succeeded. So successful people tend to have a positive interpretation of their past performance, much beyond reality. That means they tend to overrate their past performance. In the sense that they may not be the only cause of success, but they consider themselves to be the only cause of success. So essentially, if a person thinks that I am the doer, it's because of me something is happening. That's the beginning of delusion. Like a small child sitting on a father's lap, and the father is driving the car, but the child is convinced that I am driving the car. I mean, I'm sure every child has gone through that phase, you know, sitting on the father's lap, holding the steering. Father also is holding it. But somehow the child begins to think that I am doing it. Just see. And he looks at all the other children around, you know, and he starts looking at them with great pride in his eyes. Just see, I am such a small child, but I'm driving a car, you can't drive, you know. So somehow the same mindset takes shape all our life, whether we're driving a car or whether we're driving an organization. It's all about the thought process that I am driving it. It's all about the thought process that because of me, this is happening. So there are some factors which are beyond our control that determine success, that are the reasons behind why we're successful. Unfortunately, when we forget all these factors and be under the delusion that it's all because of me that success is happening, that mindset prevents change from happening in life. And therefore, successful people need one very important thing in life, and that is feedback. Unfortunately, feedback is the most difficult thing for somebody who's successful to handle. That means if somebody is giving you constructive feedback that you need to change this aspect of your life, and only then you will be able to progress in your life, it becomes very difficult for somebody who is successful to deal with that feedback. Why? Because this feedback brings out three things in you. And these are three reasons why people resist feedback so much. I'm talking about all kinds of feedback. I'm talking about feedback that husband gives a wife gives a husband. I'm talking about feedback that a parent gives a child and a child gives a parent. I'm talking about feedback that an employee gives an employer and an employer gives an employee. I'm talking about feedback that humans give one another. I tell you, I've met a lot of successful people in life. And I tell you, successful people cannot handle feedback easily. And that's the only reason that prevents them from going to the next level of success. Why people cannot handle feedback? Because of three reasons. The first reason is inferiority. That means the thought that they have is, before you give me feedback, first show that you are more successful than me. Then you give me feedback. Yeah? That's one of the most prominent thoughts that a successful person has when he gets a feedback from somebody. The second thought that a successful person has is self-image. Because taking input goes against their self-image. They all used to giving input. They're used to giving advice. They're used to giving, all kinds of consultations and all that. And suddenly somebody comes up and gives you feedback, It goes against your self-image. And the third reason is that the thought that a person has is, these suggestions are unimportant. That means, because I am successful, compared to the larger truth of being successful, these feedbacks are unimportant to me. And that's why most successful people resist feedback. There was a man who was in great anxiety, and he thought that he was too simple. That was his problem, and everybody's teasing him. Everybody's making fun of him. So he went to a doctor. He went to a psychiatrist, and he told the psychiatrist that I'm too simple, and all the time people are teasing me, people are making fun of me, people are fooling me. Tell me something. Give me some way by which I can become intelligent. I can become, little less simple, basically. So this fellow, he said, he removed a potato. And he said, you pay me $20 for this potato and you eat this potato. This is a magic potato. You eat this potato and you will become very smart, very intelligent. So this fellow bought the potato, $20, one potato. He went and cooked it and he ate it. He came back after 1 week. Absolutely no change. He said, I will give you 2 potatoes this time. You pay $40, take these 2 potatoes, definitely you will go through some change in your life. This went on for 1 week. Every day he came, this doctor would sell him one potato. This will go and eat the potato and come back next day saying no change, After 1 week he came to the doctor and he said, I think that you're cheating me. The doctor said, see, you become intelligent. For us to change, we need to approach someone whom we have faith in, who can tell us, who can point out to us. In fact, whom we give the authority to give us a constructive feedback. Every leader, every successful person in life has to have at least one person who can tell him the truth as it is, without mincing words, without hiding things, without not wanting to give bad news. Napoleon Bonaparte, when he was on his deathbed, one of the greatest repentance that he had when he was in the deathbed was he never had anybody who would give him bad news. In fact, he lost his last war because of that. This is his greatest regret. He said, nobody gave me bad news. Unfortunately, that is a fact with every successful person in life. He has no one who can give him bad news. What is the meaning of bad news? The bad news is about certain shortcomings that a person has that he has to improve upon. The bad news is about dealing with a certain personality trait which is not allowing that person to go ahead to the next level. When we have at least someone who can give us bad news, who can give us a straight feedback, and who are our genuine well-wishers, it's easy to deal with feedback. So, when you want to help somebody successful to go through a change, it is important to help that person deal with feedbacks. The next question is, how to change? There's a certain amount of relief in change. And somehow, a lot of reasons why people don't go through change in life is because they see everything that comes in life from a short distance. Like, for example, so there's a very interesting saying that says that life is tragedy from close up and comedy from distance. Which essentially means that when we are in the middle of something, when we are right into it, and when we look at it too closely, we are too serious about it. But when the same thing you look from distance, you actually laugh about it. Like, for example, I'm sure all of you would have seen fights, fights between people, verbal fights, physical fights, And I'll tell you, I have seen many fights. Especially I come from Mumbai, from India. Mumbai is a place where there's too many people, And can you imagine this? Thousands and thousands and thousands of people all around you, bound to have fights. Especially in the local trains of Mumbai. I don't know if you have ever had a chance to go through the local trains. If you haven't, you should go once at least through a local train in Mumbai in your life. You will have a life-transforming experience. People in local trains are packed up like sardines, literally packed up. It's a very famous thing in Mumbai that says that if you want a free massage, go into a local train during peak hours. Practically every part of your body gets massaged like crazy, and you come out like completely fit and fine. So, why I was talking about local trains? I was talking about how people pick up fights. When you look at two people fighting, except for the two people who are seriously fighting, everybody else is laughing around them. If you have noticed, Actually, it's a fact. When two people are seriously fighting about one small thing, for everyone else it's a comedy. It's humor. And that's the nature of life. So, when we look at trauma, when we look at difficulties, when we look at complications that come in life from close up, it looks very, very difficult. But the same thing, when we look at it from a distance, it seems so different. Just like when you are traveling in an airplane, the houses look so small, just like matchboxes, literally. But as you come closer and closer and closer to the runway, the houses expand in size. And that's what perspective is all about. Spiritual vision is about seeing every aspect of life from height. It's called as elevating your vision. That means it's called seeing life from a higher perspective. So change management is possible when you look at life from a higher perspective. There's a very interesting poem, rather a thought that came, which I would like to share with you all. This says, when I was a young man, I wanted to change the world. I found it difficult to change the world, so I tried to change the nation. When I found that I couldn't change my nation, I began to focus on my town. I couldn't change the town, and as an older man, I tried to change my family. I realized that the only thing I could change was myself. Suddenly I realized that if long ago I changed myself, I could have made an impact on my family. And my family could have made an impact on our town. Their impact could have changed the nation. And that impact would have changed the world. And therefore, the fact is, why we're discussing about change today? The whole theme of today's discussion is, I have no control over systems. I only have control over myself. I only have control over the way I think, the way I behave, the way I act, and the way I speak. And therefore, no matter how much things are happening on an external level, and we have no control over it, let us not focus on all that. Let us focus on what we can control on an internal level that can make an impact and make a change. So here are 4 belief systems, or rather 4 attitudes that we can monitor to experience positive change in our life. These 4 attitudes individually are perfect enough. Even out of the 4, if you can at least implement one attitude in your personal life, it will make a massive difference in the way you look at change in the environment around you. The first attitude is what I call as belief. What is the meaning of belief? It is an understanding that there is something higher. There is a higher power that controls us. We always heard this saying, faith can move mountains. Now, what is the meaning of faith can move mountains? What is the meaning of the whole concept of belief? I would like to share a small story. This is a story of Florence Chadwick. She was considered to be the greatest swimming champion of her times. And she was swimming across the Katrina Channel. And she was swimming continuously for 51 hours. Continuously, she had been swimming for 51 hours. And at the end of 51 hours of swimming constantly, she found that her strength was diminishing. She just couldn't handle it. She couldn't continue swimming anymore. So she had swum across the English Channel in the past. So she could have easily swum across this also. But somehow, on this particular day when she was swimming, there was a dense fog around. And she couldn't see anything ahead of her. So, can you imagine? You can't see anything ahead and you have to keep swimming. So she swam for 51 hours. At the end of 51 hours, she just gave up. The reason is because she couldn't find any hope to continue. And then when she gave up, they pulled her out, put her on a boat, and that's when she was informed that the coast which she was swimming towards was just 1 mile away. You can imagine. 51 hours she swam and she gave up because she couldn't see. She couldn't see where the destination is. She couldn't see where the end is. So we may not have the power to change, but there are higher powers which we need to have faith in. We may not be able to see it. We may not be able to see them. But if some higher power we have faith in, have belief in, That higher power gives us the strength to accept and embrace change in life. The second thing is expectations. Um, Many times in life, this is a very interesting quote by Alexander Graham Bell. He said, when one door closes, another opens. But we are so often, so long looking at the closed door, regretfully, that we don't see the ones that are open for us. So, here is something that I always talk about. There is something, I'm sure all of you have heard of Jesus Christ being crucified between two thieves, right? Now, what do these two thieves represent? The two thieves represent the past and the future. Most people don't focus on the divine present because they are busy lamenting for the past or hankering for the future. Most people are so busy absorbing in something that is not in their hand, absorbing their mind in something that is beyond themselves, that they forget to focus on what to have expectations in life about. So we crucify them ourselves between two thieves: regret for yesterday and fear for tomorrow. And we are constantly in this mood of regret for yesterday, whatever we have done in the past, whatever we have said in the past, whatever dealings we have had in the past. And we have great fear about what is going to come in the future, what is going to come ahead in tomorrow. And therefore, we need to have a sense of expectation and understand that expectations kept in the right direction, which are in alignment with the realities of life, those expectations give us hope for experiencing change in our lives. The third attitude to monitor is judgment. Most of the times, why we don't go through changes in our lives is because we tend to judge too fast. We tend to be unforgiving towards others. So not only should we be flexible in our expectations, but also be forgiving towards people. And therefore, we need to learn to modify our judgment mentality. We have a very strong judgment mentality towards everyone. In fact, there is something inside our brain which is constantly giving feedbacks. There's something in our mind that constantly is giving feedbacks. It's a constant chatter in our minds. Right now also some of you are giving feedback on what this fellow is speaking so long, constantly going on and on. So the mind has a tendency to constantly chatter, constantly give feedbacks. And if you notice the chatter of our mind, it's mostly giving negative feedbacks. It's mostly passing judgments. It is mostly passing statements. In fact, all of us are qualified to become judges, in any court, because that's what we're doing all day long, and we are very much well practiced in it, constantly judging. So therefore, it is very important that we not only be flexible in our expectations, but also forgiving towards others. A very simple, saintly person in India who had gone to have a bath in the Ganga. I'm sure all of you have heard of the Ganga. In India, we consider the Ganga to be a worshipable river, and people consider having a dip in the holy Ganga to be purifying. So one day, this man went and had a bath in the Ganga, took a dip in the Ganga, and he came out. So when he came out, there was a goon standing over there, a tough guy. As soon as this man came out, this fellow spat on him. The saintly person quietly went back and had a bath again in the Ganga and came out. As soon as he came out, this man again spat on him. The saintly person again went back, had a bath and came out. As soon as he came out, this man again spat on him. This went on 108 times. After that, this ruffian, he really got bewildered. He didn't expect him to keep going and having a bath again and again. Nowadays, who has a bath? Most people hardly have a bath once. 108 times. After that, this man, he broke down. He said, "Come on, I've been spitting on you. How did you tolerate it? The saintly person gave a very interesting answer. He said, I want to thank you because you have given me an opportunity to have 108 dips in the Ganga in one day. Yeah. He said, I would have never done it on my own. But because you did this, I must thank you. So many times, in every episode, there are two ways to look at the same episode. In every event that happens to our life, there are two ways to look at the same event. One is a positive way, and the second is a negative way. Most people who have very strong judgmental mindsets look at events always in a negative way. And that's the mind frame, that's the mindset that helps us, or rather directs us to judge people. But people who have positive attitudes, who have the ability to see an event and to see a person and to see certain episodes that happen in life and not look at it in a judgmental way, that's what helps. That attitude helps us create positive change in life. And the fourth thing that helps us create positive change is choices. Choices are considered to be the hinges of destiny. The hardest things to learn in life is which bridge to cross and which bridge to burn. So, choices are something that have to be made with integrity and honesty. And what is the meaning of integrity and honesty? Honesty is to speak what you have done, and integrity is to do what you speak about. So choices that we make in life have to be made with integrity and honesty. Higher than honesty is to actually follow a lifestyle that is in alignment with that honesty. And therefore, every time we make some choices in our life, we need to remember that choice is going to affect our life. So therefore, when we want to experience change, we need to learn to let go of some things. We need to learn to let go of certain habits, certain mindsets, certain personality traits that we have, which prevents us from going through the change. How to let go? Now, it's easy to say let go, but it's so difficult to let go. So I'm going to talk about 4 stages how we can let go and go ahead in life, how we can let go and embrace change in life. The first stage is to tell yourself, I can't control what is happening in this world. When we say that I can't control what is happening in this world, what is the principle that we're telling ourselves? The principle is, I am not the controller. The principle is that I am not the controller, which is the attitude of humility. Many times in life, one of the reasons that we can't let go is because we feel everything is in my control. I have everything sorted out. I am in full control of it. At the moment you say, let go, what happens to your control? What happens to your feeling of being a controller? And what happens to the attitude of being proud of yourself? It goes for a toss. And therefore, people don't want to let go of their control. There were 2 ants. They were talking to each other. They were in the middle of a road, and these 2 ants were having a conversation. And suddenly they saw an elephant coming on that same pathway. One ant started telling the other ant, how dare this fellow come on our path? Let's beat him up. Ant thinking of beating up an elephant. The other ant, he says, no, don't do that. Let's not beat him. He's alone, we are 2 of us. Somehow we have this whole attitude in us that we are really in control of situations. Actually, the fact is that how much control do human beings have in reality? Hardly. The temperature that is rising outside in South Africa, how much control can we do? Maximum we can control it within the room. The moment you get out of the room, you have to face the harsh realities. You have to understand that you're not in control of things. Therefore, letting go becomes easy when we understand first that I am not the controller. The second stage in letting go is I can accept that if if I am not the controller, then basically essentially the first stage is I can't control what is happening in this world. The second stage is if I can't control what is happening in this world, there must be a good reason why I can't do it. So that means right now I may not be able to see what is that good reason why I'm not able to control certain situations, certain things in my life. But when I understand that, definitely there must be a reason behind it. What it helps us with is with a principle. Accept that there is a superior intelligence working. Which brings us to the attitude of patience. Not everything in this world works according to our plan. Not everything in this world works exactly in the way we want it to work. And if I don't understand why it's not working the way I want it to work, understand there must be a superior plan. For example, there was a man who was running away from an enemy camp. There were a group of soldiers chasing him. He was a soldier in the other army. And as this fellow was running away, he ran. To save his life, somehow he ran into a cave. Now the cave was a dead end. He couldn't go anywhere from there. And the enemies were outside the cave. Now the enemies were searching everywhere else. They didn't see him enter the cave, of course. This man was desperately praying. He was desperately praying to God, somehow please save me. I don't know what you will do, but I beg you, please save me. He was making this prayer, And as he was making this prayer, right in front of him, he saw something very weird. He saw there was a spider, a huge spider. It was making a web. So he entered the cave. He was sitting in the deepest corner of the cave, and just beyond him, this spider was making a web. Now he was thinking, I prayed to God to ask for protection, ask for him to save me. And what has he sent? He sent a spider. Now what can a spider web do? If the spider was Spider-Man, it can do something, But a small spider, what can it do? The spider weaved a whole web around the place where he was. And he saw the enemies entering into the cave. And he thought he was dead. It's finished. And the enemies actually entered the cave. They started searching all around the cave. They could hear them talking. He was in a deep corner. They couldn't see him. And suddenly, one of the enemies, he said, there's a spider web here. Definitely nobody could have entered over here. Let's go from here. And they actually left. They thought there was no one because there was a spider web in front of him. This man had a very important realization at that point. His realization was, if God wants to protect me, even a spider web can become a stone wall. So essentially, in life, many of us go through situations where we understand that we are not in control, but we also don't see a logic behind why it's happening to me in my life. And there is a time we need to have this faith, patience, that if I don't understand, definitely there must be a superior reason behind it. The third thing is, I am not God. This is the third stage. I am not God, and I don't know what that good reason is, but I remain open. And if I remain open, I will find out one day. I find out about it. So this faith and confidence that a person has, that if I just have faith, if some change is happening to me in my life, if something is happening which is beyond my control, I am not able to understand it. First thing is, I recognize the fact that I am not the controller. The second thing is that I understand that right now I may not understand the reason behind it. The third thing is that if I am patient enough, one day I'll find out why this is happening. One time there was a tailor in India, Vrindavan is a very holy place in India, and it's a very small town, a holy town. And there was a tailor there stitching clothes for the different deities in Vrindavan. And this tailor was asked a very important question. It's a thought-provoking question, and his answer was just amazing. He was wearing tattered clothes, all kind of holes in his cloth and very old cloth he was wearing. Somebody asked him, "You make such beautiful cloth for God, and you're wearing such old and dirty tone of clothes. Why is God not doing something good for you?" And he gave a very interesting answer. He said, when we stitch cloth, I'm sure all of us have at one point at least used a needle and a thread, When you stitch the cloth, when you stitch anything, the first thing is that the needle has to prick in, right? When the needle pricks in the cloth, there is a hole that it creates, and it drives through the cloth. This tailor said, most people, when they go through difficulties in life, they experience the needle of God. They experience the piercing needle that seems to be piercing through layers of their life. But he said, what I see is behind the needle, there's always a thread. And what does the thread do? If you look at the thread, the way a thread embroids, the needle passes in, then comes out, then goes in again, then comes out, goes in again and comes out. It forms a mesh of different, pricks of needle. But what the whole thing does is, in the end, it becomes a beautiful embroidery of life. So this man said, when God pierces the needle, everyone focuses on the piercing, but I focus on the thread behind it. And he said, I understand that right now I may be going through difficulties in my life, but very soon I'll be able to see a pattern that these difficulties are bringing forth. And I'll be able to see that very soon these difficulties have shaped me up. And the fourth stage of how to think about letting go is, I'm not a controller, I'm not able to understand why certain things are happening to me in my life. But I understand that if I just have faith, one day I'll know why certain things are happening to me in my life. And that brings me to the fourth stage. What is the fourth stage? The fourth stage is saying that I have to let go of what I think it should be done. Of what I think should be done. And I will find out there's something much better. So that means this is the principle of harmonizing with the plans of God. Most people are very resistant to change, are very resistant to any kind of change happening in their life, because they just feel that change means it's going to take away my control. But the reality is that when we understand that changes that come into our life are not just going to take away our control, but it is actually going to help us understand a bigger plan that's waiting for us, then we become open enough to let go and embrace change that comes in life. Most people don't understand what is the difference between change and transformation. There are different types of changes that come in life. All this time I was talking about change which is external. Now I'm going to talk about change which is internal. I'm going to show you all two slides, and you'll understand that these two slides represent two ways of looking at change that comes in life. This is the first slide. It talks about going through life. These are four changes that happen in everybody's life. These are four bottles that come in everybody's life. There's a milk bottle, there's a Coke bottle, there's a whiskey bottle, and there's a drips bottle. No matter who you are, you will go through these four changes. No matter whether you do anything or no, you will go through these four changes. This is known as going through life. This is a mindset that promotes short-term thinking. There are people in life who only look at change at this level. But actually, changes on another level. Change on the other level is known as transformation. This is the spiritual way of looking at change. The spiritual way of looking at change is, it's called as growing through life. A caterpillar, when it becomes a butterfly, it cannot become a caterpillar again. A stone, when it becomes a statue, it cannot become a stone again. When a human being transforms himself into something superior, he cannot become that original human being again. And therefore, it is very important to remember that when we go through change, that's reversible. But when we go through transformation, it is irreversible. What we really need in our life is not change, which is reversible, but we need transformation that is irreversible. And therefore, it is very important for us to experience and live a life where we can experience tangible transformations. What we should be aspiring for is not change, but transformation. Change, as I said, is reversible. Just like if somebody is smoking and he says, I quit smoking from tomorrow. 2 days later, he starts smoking again. That's known as change. I often give the example of jogging. On 2nd of January, you'll find so many people enthusiastically jogging. In India, in Mumbai, there is a place known as Marine Drive. Thousands of people on 2nd of Jan just taken New Year resolutions, enthusiastic about jogging, enthusiastic about health. You go there on 2nd of February, empty. No one's there. Why? That's how resolutions are. That's how the concept of change is. Very reversible. And what is transformation? Transformation is irreversible change. Transformation means that once you have gone through the change, you will never be the same person again. And that's the quality of change that we want to look for. How do you go through transformations in life? You go through transformations in life by looking at 3 aspects of life. I'm going to share with you all these 3 aspects that will help us go through transformations. The first aspect is known as avoid unhealthy comparisons. That means, for me to experience some transformation in my life, I don't need to compare myself to somebody else. I'm an individual. God has created me in a unique way. And with this uniqueness, I need to understand that everything and everybody around me, rather than me comparing myself to somebody else, understand the uniqueness and appreciate the uniqueness of each other and synergize. Therefore, when instead of comparing ourselves unhealthily, we need to learn to accept ourselves as we are. And from that point onwards, look at change, look at transformation. The second thing is, we need to start learning to accept the realities of life. Stop comparing, avoid unhealthy comparison, but accept the realities of life. Align our expectations with the realities of life. Acceptance makes us emotionally tranquil, and non-acceptance makes us emotionally agitated. The more we learn to accept something in our life, the more we will be happier. Every time we come across an emotion in our life, like for example, if somebody shouts at you, somebody insults you, first thing is, if you deal with that insult or deal with that shouting with acceptance, it becomes known as forgiveness. Accept the fact that that person is weak. Accept the fact that that person is not able to handle the stress that he is going through. And I forgive that person. But if I'm not able to accept it, what does it become? It doesn't become forgiveness, it becomes hatred. So anything that is accepted dealt with acceptance becomes a positive emotion, and anything that is dealt with non-acceptance becomes a negative emotion of life. And the third thing we need to remember is understand that each human being has something which is his or her real strength. We need to start drawing from that real strength rather than looking at very superficial things in our lives. In spirituality, there is a very important concept of depth that is explained. The concept over here is, it says, when a hawk is flying around looking for fish, there are two ways that the hawk can deal, rather, try to catch fish. The fish that swims on the surface, the hawk can catch it very easily. But the fish that swims very deep below, the hawk cannot approach it easily. All of us in our lives also, whether our mind focuses on superficial things which are on the external level, or our mind focuses on deep things which are on an internal level, is what it depends. Just like an iceberg, it has a section that is outside the water and there is a section that is inside the water. Most often the section that is outside the water is very small. The section that is visible is very small. But the section that is not visible is really huge. Life is like an iceberg. What people see outside is only 25% of us. What people can't see is 75% of us. And therefore, what is the meaning of transformation? Transformation essentially means working on the 75% that people can't see. Our attitudes, our belief systems, our mindsets. And what is the 25% that people can see, which is what we call a change. Externally, so many changes in hairstyles, so many changes in the way you dress, so many changes on an external level, which is what people are focusing on. We shouldn't focus on that. And that's something that is easy. But what we need to focus on is transformation, which is difficult. And therefore, all that I've been speaking today for the last 1 hour or so has been on how to cope, not just with change, but how to actually bring about a transformation in our life. Because when changes come in our life, they are very, superficial and they don't last. But when transformation comes in our life, it lasts and creates a deep impact in our lives and lives of people around us. Thank you very much. If there's any questions or comments at this point.
Okay, guys, do you have any questions? I don't have a roaming mic, so there we are. Yeah, that's great, thanks. We'll just take this around the room. Any questions, guys? Don't be shy. He's only here for the next few minutes. Okay, can I ask a question? Is there anyone in the room that's currently going through any form of change and you're having some difficulty with it? You don't have to share the actual change with us, but some of the things we'd like to understand is what are the things that we struggle most with when it comes to change? Let's ask a question like that. I mean, I find it, I personally, within myself, one of the biggest challenges I have with change is actually impelling myself into action. I find that I spend more time thinking about the actual change than actually doing something to overcome the change, right? But once I commit to actually overcoming the change, then it seems to be a natural order of things that I get through the actual hurdle. Just some ideas, some questions for you guys. Are there any things that you can share with the rest of the group in terms of challenges that you've had with change? Or maybe some advice from you guys? Anyone? Yes.
I just want to say something. Every incident in life gives us an emotional impact. And that emotional impact has different degrees or different grades of intensity. How do we control, how do we accept that, and how to handle that emotional impact?
I'll tell you something that might help you look at it from a different perspective. Most people in life, when something happens to them, there is a fact, and then we make a story around that fact. Most of the times, the story that we weave around the fact has no element of truth in it. And that is where the maximum emotions are stuck at. And that is where the maximum emotions are, going really crazy. Like for example, I'll tell you a live experience. There was one lady whom I was came to one of my programs and we were discussing after that. She was talking about how her husband died recently, about 3-4 months back, and she was very strongly feeling that she is the cause of the death of her husband. Now, so she was carrying the guilt for months together that due to her neglect, the husband died. So I asked her what happened, what's the story, and what's the fact. I asked her to tell exactly what happened, how her husband died. And here is a really interesting thing that she spoke, she shared. The first thing she said was her husband was sick due to some chest pain, and she kept telling him, let's go to the doctor. So he told her, don't worry, everything is alright, it'll be fine. For almost 2 days he neglected it. He didn't allow her to take to the doctor, though multiple times she kept asking him. And then after that, one day he collapsed. Intense chest pain, just collapsed completely. And then she rushed him to the hospital. And by the time actually she got him admitted, he was already dead. This is the story. This is the whole understanding. Now, the simple thing is, out of this, what is a fact and what is the story that she made up? The fact is that her husband died. The fact is that she asked her husband multiple times that she wants to take him to the hospital, to the doctor. He denied it. These are facts. What is the story that she made up around it? The story that if she had not listened to him, he would have still been there. If she had taken him much faster, he would have still been there. If she had, been more careful with him, he would have still been there. You understand? So what happens is that there is a fact, and then there is a story that the mind makes around the fact. Most emotions are connected to the story. And therefore, first thing is when you're going through any emotions in our life, separate the fact and the story. Half your problem gets solved there only. If you can't do it yourself, you need someone to help you do it. Separate the fact from the story. Because we just mix things up so badly. We mix the facts and story up so badly, we generally get too emotional and caught up with it. I hope it makes sense.
Any other questions? Anyone else? How many of you, by show of hands, go to the gym? Quick show of hands. How many of you train? Any form of training? Running, cycling, swimming, gym. How many people? Okay. Now tell me, so quite a few of you in the room, how many of you are doing something for your emotions and for your mind on a regular basis? Right? Much fewer hands. Yeah? Tends to be a global trend. Yeah. We tend to be more physically inclined than emotionally and mentally. But strike balance. I think the last seminar we had, Shubha spoke about balance. Balance is about blending all of that. Any questions? Anyone here want to tell us anything else about something that they've overcome, perhaps, in terms of change, that can help the rest of the group? Yeah?
Okay, this has a little bit of a personal take to it. The problem is, you said that sometimes there are people that actually, the gist of what I get is sometimes those situations or those people are actually the ones who are trying to transform who you are, those difficulties, those challenges. So I look at like my own personal situation, like sometimes my spouse will say, look, I only said this because I want the best for you. And then I will say, but you're not my dad. And then he will say, well, the thing is, like, I'd like him to talk, for example, a lot more in a pleasant tone, a calm tone, not as if he's in the boardroom giving instructions down, delegating tasks, if you know what I'm saying. So, but he can't see it that way. So that's like my biggest problem is just sometimes just rapport in a personal relationship. It can make a very big difference between unhappiness and happiness. And sometimes you struggle to get that across to that person. Even if I know you can change all these things by changing yourself, but what if you are miles ahead? You're making the changes, you're looking back from where you are to who you are. And then what happens if the other people in your personal space are still in a state of delusion or denial? Not to say that they're doing everything wrong or whatever, or that you are completely right, but how do you convince them to also transform according to their own capacity, their own abilities, especially if it's in a close relationship, not like a work colleague, somebody you see once in a while, but somebody you're sharing your space, living space with, like 99.9% of the time. That's
when it comes to changing or rather transforming people who are very close to you, most of the time you're not the right person to do it. Because unfortunately what happens is when you're with somebody all the time, your flaws are very obvious.
Yes.
So you may be wanting that person to go through certain transformations, and the other way around also is true, So the way I see it is, every human being should have a fallback option. What is the meaning of fallback option? That means when you fall, whom you go to, who will help you rise from the fall. So I find it that every human being is somehow or other we can connect with somebody who can mentor us and who can guide us in slowly trying to kind of come back to that balance, rising from the fall. And it's not just about individuals, it's about families having somebody together, right? Now, what was this whole system of spiritual balance, I mean, in the past, we used to have situations where the entire family goes to a church or a temple, where they get to hear the same thing. What happens when you hear the same thing is that there is a certain type of alignment that forms. Just like when you have a piece of iron, and you take a magnet and you rub that magnet on that iron piece in one direction. What happens? All the poles in the magnet get aligned in one direction. Then over a period of time, as you keep rubbing, all the poles will point in one direction. Then there will be a north and south clearly defined. And that iron piece becomes a magnet. The same thing when it comes to people who want to follow one direction in life. You need to keep hearing a similar message. You need to keep hearing something that will give you a certain direction. And unfortunately today what happens is, two people are hearing two different messages. And therefore there is no magnetism in people. There is no connect in people. Because they're just hearing so different things. And that's where the concept of having a fallback option is. So somehow or other, I'm very clearly telling you that you may not be able to create transformation in the person that you love the most, that you're living with. You may not be able to create that transformation because it's so difficult to tell somebody to transform in a certain way when you yourself have so many defects, right? So it's best to get somebody neutral, some kind of a mentor, some kind of a well-wisher who is molding both sides. And that is more impactful and that is more practical, basically.
Thank you. Shiv, I have a very quick question. I mean, you mentioned social media earlier today, and we all tend to be in this habit of when we have some spare time, we revert to Facebook and LinkedIn and all the other different social platforms. And there's so much of information that changes our thought processes and our perceptions of what's real and what isn't. And there's so much of misinformation out there that's shaping us, that's shaping our kids, that's shaping our spouses and our friends and our partners. What are your thoughts on how we should deal with that from a change perspective?
In my understanding, information has to bring about transformation. Any information that doesn't bring a transformation is, data. So we have to be very selective in processing information because the amount of data that gets downloaded every day is huge. But how much is that data that actually transforms is very minimal. And if you, therefore, the Niti Shastra, this Niti means principles in Sanskrit. The Niti Shastras are a set of books that bring out principles of human life thinking. The Niti Shastra talks about having two mindsets. It talks about a honeybee mindset and it talks about a housefly mindset. And it's very interesting when you look at these two mindsets. The Niti says a honeybee mindset is if you see a honeybee in a garbage dump, you'll find that the honeybee focuses on a flower inside the garbage dump and it's sucking nectar from the flower. And if you look at a housefly, which is in a garden, it will find a place where there is dirt and it will sit on that. So the Niti says you have to decide what type of mindset you want to adopt. A honeybee mindset, which looks for nectar in dirt, or a housefly mindset, which looks for dirt in nectar. That's exactly what internet is. There's a huge amount of dirt and there is some nectar. People love the dirt so much that they don't reach the nectar. That's the reality of life. So there was a very famous gold miner who was very successful in his business, and he was asked, "What is the secret of success?" He said, "When I dig for gold, I don't look for dirt." As simple as that. So social media is a huge amount. It's like a gold mine or diamond mine, whatever. Huge amount of dirt, but there are pieces of gold in it. You have to decide what you want to look for. I know people who get so lost in the dirt, but by the time they come out, they're stinking already. So we need to really be focused if you want to be successful in life.
Thanks very much. Guys, any final questions? Any final thoughts?
One last question. Oh, not last, but Prabhu, in most cases, I think what we've been speaking about is a lot about I'm choosing to make changes. In a lot of cases, work situations, change is being imposed on employees because there's like restructures going on and a lot of different things happening. So it affects the individual. They might not know it directly, but it does affect them. So in that case, where the change is actually imposed on you and you're not really conscious, okay, this change is coming upon me, the emotional impact is there. But how do you become cognizant of it, and how do you deal with it in the best possible way, where it's not impacting either your personal life or your work life?
Therefore, I spoke about patience. Sometimes when some change is imposed on you and you don't want it, the first thing that the mind tells you is resist it. But a better way to deal with it is wait. Wait and watch. What that change is going to create an impact. Many times when changes happen, initially it may seem to be bad. But over a period of time, we realize that is the best change that happened. So therefore, that's why I spoke about how we are not the controller. When we understand we are not the controller, we understand that there is some higher power controlling. And when we understand that there is a higher power controlling, we also understand that sometimes I may not understand what that higher power is trying to do, but if I'm just patient enough, I will understand it. And that brings us to the whole concept of trying to have faith and have patience to be able to wait and watch. Now we are living in a very fast moving world, and everything is so fast and everything is so quick that our judgments also have become quick. Instantly we judge, instantly we pass a comment, instantly we criticize. And the moment we pass a comment and the moment we judge and the moment we decide, what happens is that there is a negative icon registered in our mind. Just like in computers and laptops, we have icons, right? Word, there is an icon. If you see the W, you immediately understand that it represents this icon. You see an X, you immediately understand it represents an Excel sheet. So these icons are very important for the mind. And when we look at people, when we look at situations, the moment we look at it, we place an icon there. Especially when you look at some change happening, you put an icon, bad. And the moment you put that icon, no matter what angle and what good happens you'll only see it as bad. And therefore, I suggest to people that we should have patience before putting icons. Sometimes we may realize that just by having patience, you may avoid putting the wrong icons to the right things in life. So if you put the wrong icon to the right thing in life, you will still consider it to be wrong only. And therefore, it is very important not to put those icons. It's very important to have the patience to see it manifesting into a certain reality before we decide whether it's good or bad for us. That's my thought.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Sorry. One more? Yeah.
Thank you for the opportunity. I'm just going to make an observation first before I ask a question. And that is that, there's always a battle between the ego and one's essence. And I think that we've all been taken so far away from our essence and socialized in ways that makes the ego drive whatever we do. And so most of our choices are from the surface, like you have the glacier image behind you, whereas and those choices that we make change in a superficial way and change very readily. Whereas deep down, if we walk from the essence, whatever we have can be more constant and can be a driving force that will really bring about the transformation that you talk about each loss. But it is a huge turbulence that pushes you towards ego choices rather than choices from the essence. And I like that you say that we need to change the self. But the driving force from the way we've been socialized is always external to us, because it is the ego that wants validation from outside. I don't know how you respond to that, because I'm actually looking at the image behind you and talking about it, in terms of essence and ego. Thank you.
Yeah, you're right, because the ego is what we want to show the world. It's all about looking good. But the essence is who we really are. We don't like to show the world that we are not good, and therefore we hide that part from the world. And what we like to show the world is actually something that we are struggling to be. We're not even that. So we have lost at both levels. We have lost at the level of the ego because it doesn't feel to be like us, and we lost at the level of the self because we have not identified ourselves. We're not able to come in terms with who we really are, and therefore people feel a lot of loneliness because somehow or the other, most people haven't found themselves, which essentially means they're not comfortable with who they are. So when you try to show the world something and when you are something, that dichotomy makes you very uncomfortable. It makes you very conscious of who you are. So that balance of trying to find a balance between what you're trying to project to the world and who you really are is what healthy self-image is about. So if those who have a healthy self-image, they are not trying to show the world who they are not. So that's what spiritual quotient is. Spiritual quotient is about integrity levels. Spiritual quotient is about being honest with yourself. Spiritual quotient is about focusing on deeper aspects of life that you have never focused on. And ego comes as a solid hurdle in us asking ourselves tough questions. Because ego doesn't like tough questions. Ego likes good questions, easy questions, fun questions. But if you really want to have a clean self-image, you need to ask yourself tough questions.
Thank you. Anyone else? Any other questions? Any final thoughts?